program, and I'm your host, Greg Fenton. Each week, we explore topics and ideas related to the experience of people with conflict and look to promote the profession of conflict resolvers. We are available to connect with at fentonmediation@gmail.com and at 647 227 4734. Check out the Facebook page for Mediation Station and the group also to ask to become a member. Also visit the YouTube channel called Fenton Mediation to see videos of past shows. Listen to podcasts of Mediation Station on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Please follow us at our Twitter account, which is at Fenton Mediation. The conversation today is called Aligning with Mindful Parenting. With me today will be Shelley Hasho, and she'll be with me very shortly. The program is live each Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will engage in conversation with everyone attending able to listen and watch the conversation. Microphones and webcams will be closed. And if anyone wants to contribute anything, there are two options. One option is to see the chat icon as a bubble at the bottom center of your screen for you to click to then type in a comment or question and then click to send. Or you can click on the reactions icon that is also located on the bottom center of your screen. Then click on within that, the hand icon that for all of us to see that you want to speak, and we will open up your microphone only for you to speak and to share your comment or question, and then close your microphone once again. The show is being recorded for both video and audio purposes that will be uploaded for public access on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts afterward. So as I mentioned, today we are talking about aligning with mindful parenting. And with me is Shelley Hasho. So hi, Shelley. Welcome to
Hi,
the
Greg.
program.
Thank you. Thank you for
Nice,
having me.
nice to see you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So how about you start off and share some information about your professional journey? What's that
Sure.
about?
Sure. Well, I'm a registered social worker, and I've been working in Toronto, in West Toronto, for about 15 years with diverse community groups. I've been based in Malton. Shout out to everyone in North Mississauga and Malton, which is a very diverse but very resource limited community. I've also worked in Southern and West Toronto in case management with folks with really severe mental health diagnosis and comorbidities and substance abuse issues. I would say the lion's share of my working career has been with refugees downtown, in resettlement, and with advocacy work and outreach work, and also supporting around housing stabilization. Recently, I've been teaching social work education at a few colleges here in Toronto, as well as one or two of the other universities. So I love teaching. It's one of those things that I just stumbled upon and totally changed my life. I wasn't expecting it. So that's kind of my recent roots.
Seems like your life is pretty filled with a lot of stuff that is connected to your passion and your work that really is with intention and purpose.
Well, it's interesting you say that because all of my academic work really kind of followed just what I was intuitively doing. So even in my undergrad days, I found myself volunteering at folks in Toronto would know it, the Evergreen Center for Street Involved Youth. I was volunteering in the art studio there on Mondays. I was just finding myself working in group homes because I was just kind of, yeah, intuitively following what felt right to me. And then 15 years later, I was like, you know what? Oh my goodness, this is social work. Let's go and get accredited. let's do the Masters of Social Work. And I also studied at Ryerson at the graduate level in their immigration and refugee, or sorry, their immigration and settlement studies program. So all of my academic kind of work really followed suit just to my people engagement work. So yeah.
So what do you see as being the things that have been the most impressionable on you as you have journeyed along in your life and also navigated into your professional stuff?
Yeah. As I'm aging, um,
Aging, what's that word mean?
I know it's so relative, isn't it? But I guess one of the things that's really starting to dawn on me is that uh, really the things that are of most value in life are all about relationship and the quality of our relationships. Um, it's kind of cliche to say, but as I'm getting older and navigating day to day through this world around me, I'm realizing that, if I can trace, my happiest memories, it's to people. If I can trace my, moments of contentedness and joy, it's because there was something to share with somebody that I felt safe with, that has loved me or cared for me or mentored me or offered space for relationship with me. So um, I would say, yeah, even in my professional environments, it boils down to relationship. So
Yeah, I hear that theme through the work that you're involved with, all the different approaches to try to connect with people and the various forms of relationships, especially people who are distinct from you. What do you identify that with and from?
yeah, interesting, Greg, that you mentioned that. I was just talking with my partner about this yesterday. How funny enough, I've often found myself feeling just more comfortable with people who don't look like me, who don't sound like me, who don't talk like me, um, who are from different ethnic backgrounds, different social locations. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's that in order to engage, there has to be a level of humility and I and openness, and that's a mutual reciprocal dynamic, right? And for some reason that works with me. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I very much identify with those, the whole concepts of openness and diversity, and that life doesn't live solely through the way that I am. And I'm privileged in terms of my identity and how I see it as part of my intention and purpose to try to create a pathway so that others can walk along with me and
Hmm.
journey. For me, it's like about social change, challenging the systemic constructs that are out there, so that we can find a more ideal, inclusive society.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too, when you're in situations where you're engaging with folks just from diverse backgrounds, um, you have to kind of set aside your assumptions. And there's just kind of, in my experience, there's just more openness for the relationship to just be authentic and be what it is, without a lot of assumptions or without the sense that, for whatever reason, um, the relationship is advantageous in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. Sometimes I feel in our culture, we often approach relationships from a position of advantage, like, how what's the edge this individual could help me gain, and I'm always a little bit kind of aware of that dynamic, but no, it's been, you know, my working career up till now, it's been an absolute gift, and it's even most recently gone in a new direction, which I really, again, it's one of those things where I feel roads that I've ended up taking and that have been the most fruitful were not the ones I planned. um, I was kind of planning and working on something else, and then something else opened up, and I just knew intuitively to follow. So I'm super grateful for that.
So taking on what you've said in terms of the self-awareness and your identity and your, I'll put words in you. It's somewhat taken from me. Your sense of privilege. You work with a lot of community
Mm.
individuals and groups who don't identify the same way as you. How do you help to create the pathway that they don't get stuck on what you present physically, verbally, so that they can see a deeper you?
Wow, that's a huge question there. And that could be a whole other separate conversation. Um, I think just going back to the issue of relationship, I've tried my best over the years to be very mindful of the discourse and politics um, that absolutely are all around us in every engagement we have with every single person that we interact with. I guess I've tried to um, be as present as I can in moments so that I can be as human as possible in a way that respects issues of privilege, authority, influence, power. To be mindful of these things, to be mindful of difference, but to honor it, uh, and to leave it, uh, I guess to not try and embody all of those politics in the moment, but just to try and hold space that I'm engaging with a human being, um, and that I'm, in a sense, a human being. And so, um, how do you navigate the world, in a way that is mindful of the structural aspects that impact the quality of people's lives, but at the same time choose to see you, Greg, as a person, right?
I
As an
appreciate that.
individual. Yeah,
Yeah,
just as a human with
yeah.
feelings and thoughts and desires. And um, I think that's a dance. I think that's a dance that happens with every single conversation that we have with people, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's a continuum. I think
mhm,
we have to have intention and purposes that referred to early to keep connected to our moments so that we can best inject ourselves to
yeah.
have the best ways to work along with people. Though, I sense it's similar to you, is that it's about people as human beings having ownership of them, you know,
Hmm.
self-empowerment, self-determination.
Yeah, and I think of something like Maya Angelou said, something like, in the end, it's not what you said or did that somebody's going to remember. It's how you made them feel. And and I do think we perceive on the level of feeling with each other, right?
Yeah,
And so people can feel our intention and feel our authenticity. And I tend to trust that to emerge as it should, I guess. Um, when I'm interacting with anyone, really, especially diverse groups. We're all diverse, right? Like this is the thing I'm trying to talk to my son about right now. He's 11, and I'm saying because he's in school and he's in grade 6. It's a huge transition. Um, he's super insightful. He's sweet. He's curious. Academics is not his strong point, and so my message to him is, honey, we're all different. Like there is no normal. Like there isn't. It's okay. Like we all have learning variance. We all learn differently. And it's more about the effort. It's more about where our thoughts rest and where our thoughts reside, um, versus the A's and the B's. So I had to learn that in university. He's learning that now. But yeah, I mean, that whole sense of like, where does our significance come from? Where do we, it's be, I guess that conversation with my son is at its root is, where does my sense of personal significance come from? And so, wow, what a conversation that we all have, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've had this uh, previous shows and conversations on identity in terms of where does identity come from? how is identity identified? Is it identified externally to us, or is it identified from within ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
I think the true sense of ownership and power is when we have control over that uh, narrative of who we are, what we are, and what we want to do,
Mm-hmm.
self-determination. So I know that you're really uh, passionate about parenting. Why is that? What is that all about?
Well, it's my double full-time gig right now. Um, so I have three kids, and my oldest is 11, and then I have my middle child's 8, and then my youngest is 5. And I would say that what they share together is they're all insightful. They all are making these unbelievably important connections every day to themselves and the world around them, and to really massive concepts like love and eternity, and like, what do rainbows mean, Mom? And I'm like, well, let's talk about that, right? But where and they're all curious, but where they diverge is that's the starting point. They're all very different kids. One is super emotional, perceives on that level, like lives on that level, is very, very sensitive, very perceptive, very at times hard to hard to pin down to planet Earth in the sense of just emotional regulation. It's and I have another child who's super rational, very like 10 steps ahead of me all the time, um, and super engaged with details. And then I have my another child who's just like a fairy, who's just this sweet, imaginative, lovely bird that's just all over the place. And so parenting, it's a minute by minute experience. There's no, you know, I mean, on one hand, I think this is the most hopeful time for parents, because the body of literature and work that's being done is just absolutely fantastic for parents now. Certainly, when we look at the role of attachment theory, and the issue of what we understand now with the brain and neuroplasticity. I mean, it's just incredible. Um, but parenting is absolutely not a formula. That's at least that's personally my own experience to date.
Interesting you spoke about the brain. Last week's conversation was really centered on the brain
Hmm.
and the whole concept of the front end and the back end, as per the conversation, how it guided us, and the rational to the, let's just say the emotional based, and the back end, and how that contributes to our decision making. So, how do you see the relationship of self with parenting?
Well, it's interesting. I think, like many things in life, um, many of a lot of our activities and endeavors, aren't they like mirrors? They almost embody like that self-reflective experience of mirror, where we're watching ourselves, um, almost sometimes for the first time, as we're kind of navigating certain things. And I think the relationship with the self in parenting is absolutely, at least again, I can speak from my own experience. Um, I don't know if I ever really knew myself until I was a parent. Really, I mean, this is the heavy work of the personal development. uh, you know, you're a parent charged suddenly with 24/7 care of a little human being until they launch, so to speak. And even after that, but I almost wonder if, as you parent, you're also growing up, basically. And so how conscious you choose to take that journey is your own decision to discern and to make. Um, and again, I think too, as I was just sharing about the body of work that's accessible to us to help us understand our roles as parents, help us understand, what's age appropriate development, so that we have healthy expectations, I think, and reasonable expectations for our children in terms of what they should and shouldn't be demonstrating at certain ages. That's super helpful. But at the same time, the parenting journey, it can be a lone experience. It is a lone experience. It is a journey into the self. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that that we talk about the kids or the children, whatever age they are, and how we connect with them or try to connect, and then I think simultaneously we're looking to create that connection of our kids or children with us, so that there's a collaborative journey that's taking place continually. What's the cornerstone for you of empathy
Mm.
and its relationship with parenting? How does that concept of empathy connect with parenting?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, this is where my experience in social work and client engagement and teaching on empathy. I've stood in classrooms and on Zoom teaching about empathy for 5 years,
Yeah.
um, and it's helped me understand a little bit more fully how empathy what it looks like and how it's used, and the wonderful impacts for folks. But yes, empathy, I believe, is the cornerstone of parenting, of, I guess, healthy parenting, respectful parenting. Um, it is the pathway to relationship. Um, yeah, it's
Building connection, belonging.
yeah, and really, empathy allows us to create space for understanding perspectives that are not our own. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts we can give our kids, especially in moments of distress, is if we can hold off on our own perspective, if we can re- place that to the side, to the wayside momentarily. um, Oftentimes empathy allows us just to create presence with our children, so that we can hear where they're at, we can hear what's motivating their back talk, we can hear the stress and anxiety that's behind the disrespectful response. um, and again, I'm talking about moments of distress. There's moments of incredible joy and connection that we experience with our kids as a result of empathy too. Um, so, but it seems like at least from my experience, when I feel like I've scaled a mountain emotionally, um, and that win of thinking, okay, maybe I can go on another day, because sometimes parenting is so hard, at least again in my experience, that it's like, I think there's some little quote flying around Facebook that I've sometimes read, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. Is there's something like, courage is just, whispering in the night, oh, I'm gonna keep going on tomorrow, or something like that. But really, sometimes just being present with our children emotionally in a positive way and not in a reactive way. I guess here's the thing about empathy. It is the difference between responding to your children and reacting to them. Um, so reacting often leads down roads where we then have to repair. Not always. Sometimes I think our kids do need to see just a very unfiltered response to their behavior. It's like that is one at times, not always. I wouldn't advocate for that on a regular basis, but I think there's one-off situations where your kid, it's okay for your kids to see the gravity of the importance of a particular situation, and how their behavior, the responsibility of their behavior. And again, it depends on age, it depends on where they're at cognitively, um, but as a general rule, empathy is what I think keeps us connected. It's what keeps the trust. so that our kids can keep listening and keep responding and keep reaching out.
So I want to acknowledge somebody in the audience gave you a heart for your comments.
That's
So
awesome.
it's obviously touched somebody in terms of connecting with them through even through the Zoom. There's a way to, the virtual
Yeah,
world to create
I
the
love
connection.
the I love the emojis. And this is it's like something I've told my kids about tears. It's wonderful what we know now. Like there's the science of tears. Like tears, so there's a wonderful uh early childhood attachment theorist that I'm so proud to say is Canadian from the West Coast. His name's Gordon Newfield. And he's researched on the role of tears, and often tears is there's a word I'm thinking of, but it's the resolution, or it's the sense of acceptance that can come as relief. So it's not necessarily the expression of pain. It can be, but often, like the role of tears, even in our body, it's a marker of acceptance for disappointment, or what have you. And so when we think of even how we talk to our kids about tears, and some of our, the kind of the messaging of previous generations around toughen up, suck it up, stop crying, all of this. Although, yeah, there's moments some kids are really, they cry a lot, and so then there's some coaching around resilience, and being able to bear disappointment. But by and large, I think tears serve a purpose in the body, and they serve a purpose emotionally, that allows our kids to just experience a wide range of emotions without shame, um, or a lot of just guilt at having feelings that are negative. And this is
Yeah.
something, as a parent, that's been really hard for me even to manage and to help and encourage my kids. Like, and again, this is where we circle back to the sense of self. Like, I'm growing up as I'm raising children, in terms of creating spaces for our kids just to, without shame, feel.
Well, you talk about self. So, and you talked about empathy with regard to your kids.
Hmm.
Well, let's shift the self to self, you. So how empathic are you to yourself
Oh,
and
wow. So
with yourself?
yeah, so that's crazy, because I was going to share earlier that in social work, I've kind of talked a lot with our students around really kind of encouraging them to take this notion of self-care. So in social work practice and education, we see self-care as a seminal discipline of practice. It's there's nothing wishy-washy about it. It's not about, baths and although it can be that, but it's serious business in social work education and practice to learn about yourself in a reflexive manner, to the point where you really develop self-care practices that are professional disciplines, right? For longevity in the field, and really to be accountable to our clients and ourselves and our teams, and the communities that we serve. But I'm now to the point where I think it has to go beyond that, and we have to start talking about self-compassion, and so too in parenting. Um, I have I have not been able to offer my kids um, radical self love in moments that I've not already offered myself first,
Well, when you
if
say
that
the
makes
word
sense.
radical, what do you mean by that?
I do think self love, the concept of loving yourself, it's somewhat radical. It's somewhat disruptive. I think our whole culture is predicated on the sense that what you have isn't enough yet, right? Like we live in a capitalist, neoliberal uh, at least here in the West, primarily, where consuming serves a purpose of acquiring, accumulating more. But what's behind that? It's the sense of what you have in art presently is not enough. Um, Now, we can take that in a really extreme way, or, I tend to swing the pendulum towards some sort of middle meter, but I think there's something to be said about that. So the sense of contentedness as we are right now, you're enough. You've always been enough. Everything you ever needed, you have within you, right? So
Well,
that,
well, sorry to interject. At the same time, how many people struggle with that sense of self-worth, that sense of self-identity, and
yeah.
quote, it's not sufficient because a lot of times they may base their sense of self based on externals, other people telling them and
Hmm.
saying and judging them and
Yeah.
placing them in these boxes.
Yeah. And I guess it's becoming more apparent to me because I'm watching my kids begin to navigate this whole world of friends and social value and who has social value and social capital, even on the schoolyard, um, and who's ostracized and why. And so it's interesting, Greg. I mean, just in a moment of transparency, I think only now at age 44, I've come to realize that my significance, my personal worth, is not is not completely wrapped up in my professional achievements. And I mean, I say that knowing that I entered social work because there's just part of me inside of me that is oriented to helping make wrongs right. It's just a part of me. It's just, and I think this has also at times been really challenging as a parent, is my sense of fairness. So when my kids are starting to fight, I have to really be careful because my sense of fairness at times causes my own emotional overwhelm, that at times I've just had to kind of walk away and be like, okay, you know what? The house isn't blowing up. We don't have a fire. There's no gas issue. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no one's got a broken leg. It's going to be okay. And I've had to step away for a minute and be like, okay, how am I going to support my kids to problem solve here? This is ultimately an issue of problem solving. And this is where it's been helpful at times, uh, just to be able to put on my academic hat or my practitioner hat and be like, okay, what is a strengths-based approach to working with people? How does that help me right now? Um, when we look at just wonderful things around the growth mindset, how does this help me uh, work with my child around the disappointment of not being able to pick the movie on Friday night or whatever, what have you? So there's been lots of ways that I've been able to kind of practice mindfulness that way to access some of the tools that I already have and use in different areas of my life. Although that's not, I mean, that's my goal is, to bat it out 10 times out of 10. But the reality is, I'm sleep deprived. I'm tired. I work full time. My husband works long hours. Um,
You mean you're a human being?
yeah, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I've had too much coffee. I haven't had enough,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So,
Let me share also a comment from the audience.
sure.
In the sports world, athletes are taught that our self-worth is based on our performance. This
Hmm.
is not the concept of radical self-love. Great point, Shelley, on we are all good enough just as we are.
Yeah. And I mean, even when we think about like some of the mental health challenges our our kids are currently struggling with, like social anxiety, um, all kinds of mental health diagnosis. And so uh, I think there's I think there's a lot of room for further discussion around how we teach our kids self-value, um, and especially around issues of anxiety and learning variabilities. So the wonderful thing is we know so much more now about how kids are learning in different ways. Our school system is not equipped really to maximize that knowledge in terms of how kids are learning. And so oftentimes you've got a large group of kids in every single school that feel like their circle's being crammed into squares. And how does that impact kids' sense of self over 12, 13 years in the education system? So, um, yeah, there's lots there around self-love. I mean, that we can take that in lots of different directions.
So something that came up for us as part of when we were having the conversation to focus on what we wanted to focus on, you were intentional on wanting to include the word aligning. So
Hmm.
aligning what?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about the word alignment, I mean, I think that understanding that circles that term is the sense of joining together or connecting or bringing together. And certainly, I think modern day parenting really involves at some point some self-reflection around values. What are your personal values? How does that play into mothering and nurturing or fathering another living thing, and what practices or behaviors um, best demonstrate our best values. So alignment also speaks to purpose and intention and um, work. So I guess the point being, I don't think any of this, sometimes we think of, mindful parenting, oh, permissive parenting. No, I think aligned mindful parenting is a life's journey, and it's a daily practice of waking up and with your best intention to engage with your child. It really is all about engagement. It's the
Yeah,
act of artful engagement. Yeah.
yeah. What I'm hearing from you too, which resonates so much with me, is about how we are self-aware to be connected to our moments as they happen, being
Hmm.
mindful of those moments and
Hmm.
seeking to connect with those moments and have those moments connect with us so that we can be more intentional and purposeful with those
Yeah.
moments to create the best interaction, and thus leads to engagement where it's more involved in a collaborative way, in a productive and healthy way. So how do you, with values, because as a parent you're trying to give uh, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're trying to present for your children, what are the things that they should look to as part of appreciating, and the thing overall, even the good and the bad, because I think people need to appreciate the bad to understand that, quote, they're not healthy and productive. So the context of that. And so providing the values that you want them to have, yet at the same time, being aware that as a parent, it's natural to be protective. So how do you find a way to provide space for your kids to actually live their moments the best way that's healthy for them
Yeah.
relative to, injecting and imposing yourself on them?
So that's a huge question, and one that I think about every day. I mean, parents spend more time with their kids than ever, I think, than any generation, even though they're working more. Um, but kids simply don't have safe spaces anymore to not be with with caregivers, if that makes sense. Um, in the 70s and 80s, I mean, I remember pedaling around my neighborhood for hours by myself. There weren't any parents at the park um, monitoring our conversations for language, for bullying, for sharing. So, I mean, this is a really tricky, hard discussion because yes, there has to be free spaces where our children can live and experience, and you hope that um, your best efforts um, pan out with your child. But here's the thing: I'm also realizing um, our children yes, nurture helps support who they are, but they already are innately gifted with, um, I think kids are born good, and that's where they will lean. Of course, a lot of activity happens on the schoolyard, and social media, I think, is, wow, like that's a whole other topic that we could talk about for the entire hour, just around how do we teach our kids to navigate social media, to use it for its good, and also to protect from what can harm, because there's just, it's just a,
Yeah.
let's put it this way, social media, the landscape is an adult space. It's not for kids, I don't think, inherently. Although
And
I know it's being programmed for kids, but it's an adult space. So yeah, I don't know if I kind of really got to the heart of your question, Greg.
you got to the heart as you wanted to get. And it's not
Mm,
for me to say, hey, there's more to it for you.
yeah.
You have ownership of that, and I really appreciate what you've presented. And the idea is that there's so much we can do as parents, and each child, as you've expressed, that each of your three are unique amongst, even though you're all part of a collective as family, and as they're gonna get longer in their years, age in some way,
Hmm.
that they're going to shift and develop in different ways over time, and that's where you're going to be walking along with them, and try to see how to support and reinforce the positivity. I think, though, it's important for the kids to be aware of the realities of life. And as I suggested earlier, the healthy stuff, the positive stuff. I think they also really believe they have to be aware of the unhealthy stuff, so
Oh,
that they
absolutely.
know that doesn't resonate.
I think our the world around us is so complex, and because we have access to so much more information, from multiple places, I think our children are being more exposed than ever before, um, to how hard the world is at an earlier age. So I think I guess this is the task of every parent to navigate. How much do you how much do you expose your children to in purposeful ways, and how much is age appropriate? And that really is tailor made for every family and every child. Um, so I don't think there's any blanket answers on that one.
No, there's a whole bunch of variables, and my two favorite words, though it's not that I tend to really want to say it, it's just it depends. There's so many things to consider and factor into,
Hmm.
and not all things can fit into a cookie cutter approach to say, okay, this is the way it needs to be and should be, and blanket and spread that blanket out and cover everybody with that. It's
Hmm.
going to connect with people differently. How do you, yeah, go ahead.
Greg, could
You,
I just say one thing as
yeah,
you're sharing? This is something that kind of is surfacing for me. I think in the end, our children, how and when they're going to be exposed to the hardship of the world, they will be. I think our purpose as parents is to create an environment where they can rest in our love from that hardship, from the hardship of the world. Does that make sense? So to create enough safety and enough positive attachment that our children know that we're a place of rest.
a sense of safety, trust, security.
Hmm. Like, when you embrace someone, and not just your child, but perhaps one of your best friends. Like, I have somebody in my life who has the gift of hugging. Like, when they hug me, I'm serious. I feel something medicinal happening in me. Like, it's just, that's their gift. That embrace is restful in the deepest sense. My goodness, I hope each of us have at least one of those people in our lives. And I think for some parents, that's through the gift of conversation. Through some parents, that's through the gift of just the quiet with our kids. For some parents, that's in their physical embrace. But I do think our kids desperately need rest. They desperately need rest in a spiritual, emotional sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's to reflect, an opportunity to process their lived experiences, their moments, to sort
Yeah,
it out their way, right? They have ownership to put it in their sense of mindset and how that will work in terms of their future capacities and competencies. There's a question I want to inject in the
sure.
conversation from the audience. How important is it to teach your children
Mm,
emotional regulation skills?
yeah, this is a biggie. I really feel like um, this is one aspect of parenting which is very, very difficult. So we have, and here's where I think as parents, um, oh yeah, here's where as parents, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think the generation that my parents come from, they were not modeled a positive emotional regulation. It was either you're quiet and compliant and happy, and anything else that you're modeling is suppressed by any means, right? And so, do you guys hear my child crying in the background?
What interesting timing.
Yeah. Can I give her a hug? Do you mind, Greg?
No,
Just
you
one moment.
do, you need to do and what
Okay,
you feel she needs
just
to do. I mean, that's an ideal moment
just one
here.
moment.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be right back.
yeah, go ahead, deal with it. So I'll just put it out to the anyone in the crowd if there's anything that someone's shared now. Hugs are the best medicine. So yeah, especially in time of need, it really connects. So anyone want to ask anything as well? I mean, Shelley will. We have somebody,
Okay,
a little person coming back.
this is a sweetheart.
Yes.
We can buy more gum.
So someone in the crowd has said, Greg, you look like you need a hug. How do you identify that I need a hug?
Okay.
So, okay, we'll answer that later. Hugging.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Can you say hi? Okay, girls. Anna. See?
Hello.
Anna, thank you for being generous. You
This
girls
is
need to go now.
this is the
A little bit
life
later.
that I really appreciate of live
Okay.
interaction,
And I'm eating food.
and I
Okay,
value
can you
that.
be quiet?
So,
Okay,
what's
go.
going on for you? Can you hear me?
So we had a little problem coming up around gum. Okay, Anna, go and close the door.
You need a mediator?
Okay, Eva can stay. I'll talk to you later, Anna. Okay, thank you.
Laura, come into the crowd, Laura.
So, so I wanted just to share,
Yeah.
where were we at? Emotional regulation. Here we go. So I was reading around co-regulation. Here we are right now. How many of us were basically just left to cry it out alone, right? At certain points. Now, I'm not saying, I think there are moments where we can overindulge our children emotionally. Um, so everything, there's balance to everything, right? And Greg, I don't know if that's speaking again to your comment about they need to understand the world's not always fair. The world's not always just. Like
Hmm.
there's, but anyway, the there is this idea in parenting literature around co-regulation that for example, you stay in presence with your child in their distress without becoming emotionally overwhelmed yourself, which takes a lot of discipline and work, self-work. Um, and and so through that connection and presence, you then assist in their resilience so that, and who knows when, they're able to manage those emotions on their own safely. So um, it's a wonderful concept of co-regulation, which kind of leans on attachment theory, which basically which is really contrary to like Western notions of child rearing. So my background is Anglo-Saxon. Um, I love my parents, but Anglo-Saxon culture is very much child rearing. It's like the goal of child rearing is so that your child can be as independent as possible, as quick as possible. Meaning, I remember my mom at 9 months, my mom, when my son was 9 months old, was like, he's ready for the crib now in his own room. That sense of they need to detach from you as early as possible. And and this has been another journey because my husband is Albanian, he's Balkan culture is where basically your children are on your body like until they can run. And that sense of, my goodness, you would never leave a crying child. You would never leave a child cry alone. So it's so interesting how even culturally this plays out. So thank you everyone for your patience as we just had that
Well,
experience.
well, actually, someone from the crowd is also showing exactly what you're illustrating, mindful parenting right now, and that your daughter is actually trying to make faces with the gum, which I really appreciate too. I saw you. Don't worry. So here, I have something to show you. What do I look like?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Am I okay? Well, we are what we are.
Yeah, bravo. Thanks, Greg. That was cool. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, are you feeling better now, young person? Yeah.
How about, can you go and mommy will talk to you later? Here.
Thank you, Laura. They do suit me. I plan to wear them more permanently. The ears and the nose.
Sure.
So let me ask you, Shelley,
Yes.
is it about a parent aligning with their child or the child aligning with their parent or both or something else? Did you hear the my whole?
Yeah. Close the door, Ev. Thanks. Close the door, sweetie. So I think Greg, as parents, it's our primary responsibility to set the stage for healthy attachment. I mean, I don't think we ever place that responsibility into our child's hands, right? I get that's just my initial response as just with maturity and years and I think this speaks to something that it's very that we as parents can fall into very quickly is having expectations that our children just are not cognitively able to meet, right? Like there's just age and stage issues, right? At what age, is it reasonable to expect your child can do A, Y, and A, B, C? And sometimes just because of fatigue and life and work and balance, it's like, just get yourself dressed. We got to get out of here. How come you don't have a sense of time management skills, right? Well, you're 7. So that kind of thing that can often um, just create roadblocks for us as parents when it's just strategies can actually help manage that, right? And skills coaching. So,
Well, some of the message was that I heard is that we're talking about child development. You know,
mhm,
kids connecting in different points and times of their lived experiences in their life journey
yeah.
in terms of progression and development, growth, etc. What about using the same with regard to parental or parent development? I mean, before we become parents, we're not required to take parenting skills courses.
You know something? This is something I mentioned to my nieces at Thanksgiving. Is I said, I think there's value for people to take a serious diagnostic of their resources before having kids. Um, and honestly, I think parenting, as we were talking about the self in parenting, the the triggers that can come up, the confronting our childhood, and some of which are conscious, memories. Some of our memories are unconscious. Um, Behaviors, trends, patterns in relationship that haven't been healthy uh, in terms of the households that we grew up in. Um, I think in parenting, again, my own experience, I've tended to utilize the positive aspects of my childhood. I've tended to struggle with, as a parent, parenting with the challenging or problematic aspects of my childhood. So I I think it's safe to say most parents would say yes, parenting is triggering, and that's that self-reflection. That's that mirror, right? That parenting holds up. Um, that we get to decide: is this going to be an opportunity, or is this going to be a burden, right? So that sense of, um, I have a very good friend who coined a term with marriage, the journey of marriage, something to the effect of build towards repair. Now, again, there's issues in marriage that's like, no, this can't be repaired. This needs, separation for lots of different reasons. But I do think that mindset of, um, if it isn't an immediate risk to yourself or to others, if there's not, like, safety issues, if these are relationship roadblocks, do we look at them as, opportunities to grow, or do we look at them and build and rebuild and repair, or do we look at them as, I guess, places that we stay in terms of getting stuck, in habits and just ways of communicating, and so too in the parenting journey. So, this is something that I've really, really struggled with. I assumed I'd be like the cool, calm, collected mom before I had kids. Like, I'm pretty chill, but my parenting has really surfaced a lot of stuff for me. I'm not chill. And certainly, around boundaries. This is like my life's work: is how do I how do we create respectful engagement with our kids that honors their like their need to be raised, their need for rules and structure and accountability and responsibilities, um, and how do we set the stage in a positive way where we can actually handle the resistance, because this is the thing, right? Most boundaries are set um, because resistance is expected, and it's hard, and how do we handle that emotionally? And so I think the skill of developing the ability to set boundaries is huge. I mean, isn't that with life though? You know,
Well,
with
life is,
anyone.
yeah, life for me is like full of constant and shifting, changing moments and
Hmm.
events, and how we connect with those. It, hopefully, we can be connected with them to affect them and have more, rather than them affecting us, and then we have to deal with the outcomes of things that we weren't necessarily prepared for.
Sure.
We can never be, I believe, fully prepared for everything. Life is with unexpecteds all the time.
Hmm.
What about, you know, alignment with regard to parenting? You have two parents, obviously. You could have more because if that dynamic is there. So if the two parents are aligned within a relationship, and are they needing to have the same manner of parenting? And then a second part of this, when that relationship transitions from being a couple or connected to now being independent, when people's intimate relationship ends and they have children, there's this whole thing in family. You have to create a template of co-parenting.
Hmm.
And then that dynamic where the parents tend to project a lot of their own ill will to the other parent through the children. So start with the one when the people are together as a couple. And then the second piece is when they transition,
Hmm.
the alignment
Well,
piece.
I mean, one of the earliest disagreements I had with my partner when we got married was not about like major life worldview issues. It was about, you know, okay, here's our budget for the week. Are we going to get broccoli or cauliflower? And this is just, this is the stuff of life. I mean, then you throw in kids. And I say that casually because, um, I don't think anyone can be prepared until they're in it. And it's like, oh boy, here we go. This is a fast moving train. Um, and so even I think there is the benefit of shared culture and shared faith, shared values. That can bring benefit. All that can also trip us up too. And so I think I would think most marriages, there's differences of opinion about parenting styles. And again, differences of experience. Um, this is an ongoing negotiation. It's minute by minute, right? And
Hmm.
certainly I can reflect that's the case. That has been the case in our family. As I shared earlier, I'm Anglo-Saxon. My partner is Balkan. Very, very different ways that we engage with our kids. Um, one has the tendency to, oh, just one has the tendency to probably lean on the side of being permissive. One leans on the side of structure and learning the importance of our children understanding no, and it's okay. It's okay to hear no. It's not the end of the world. So absolutely, and I mean, in terms of when relationships end in divorce, I do think this is where common values come in. And I think the ability to somehow, in the midst of pain, because I have not experienced divorce, but people who've shared with me privately, discuss it as if it's a death. It's that
A
life,
loss, grief.
it's that life altering. So
Hmm.
imagine that, and then with this odd sense of connectedness still, because you have kids that you need to raise. And so um, I do think this is where reflection and the sense of there's something higher here than just us and our needs and our desires and our wants. There's a greater task at hand. So um, how people find that maturity in the midst of that kind of upheaval is remarkable. But that's again, I mean, that's the power of love, because in most cases, parents will do absolutely anything to make sure that their kids have what they need to grow and thrive. And so, but I also think too that this is sorry, probably the most promising time for parents to navigate this kind of relationship change in the best for families. I mean, we have family mediation now as opposed to strictly through the legal courts. We have access to a lot more supports and resources than one or two or three generations ago. Um, so,
Yeah, there's lots we can talk about. We continue to talk
mhm.
about, though. It's reached a point where I sort of have to consolidate us. One, to ask if anyone has a question or comment they want to inject into the conversation before we transition off into the sunset. Well, of course, the sun has set in this part of the world at this
Absolutely.
time. Um, so let me ask you, what is having this conversation? Because it's, parenting and passion and parenting are one and the same for you. It's an alignment for you, Shelley, that I appreciated from our conversation. What does having this conversation mean to you?
Well, it's been a vulnerable conversation. It's easier for me to talk about social work practice. Uh, I could talk about theory all day. Um, it's vulnerable to talk about parenting because often our greatest personal challenges surface in parenting. And so just the commitment in my human frailty, my commitment is to not stop working at this. And it takes it's a conscious effort. It's consciousness, and so um, um, I guess my forward thinking is to keep voicing just my own experience and to kind of be in moments where I create space where other people can maybe perhaps breathe and know they're not alone, and know and have their experience validated for the hard, thankless journey that it often is. So, what that looks like and how that shapes up, I'm not sure. But it's been really amazing to just have the opportunity to talk to you about this.
Well, let me provoke you a little bit more. I mean,
Hmm.
without me saying it, you have this bigger picture that you sort of want to create as a pathway with your
Yeah,
parenting. So, how do you see that happening? What kinds of things do you envision doing or wanting to do?
yeah. So one of I have a clinical direction that I really want to look into. Um, is actually clinical hypnosis. So, I was reflecting earlier on just the vast amount of literature that's available, parenting strategies for folks now who feel they need support, and a lot of our different kind of therapy modalities are very much talk based. They're psychodynamic, um, and they speak and they address the rationale, the space in us. But any parent knows the moment you're being triggered, it's very difficult to pause, although the pause is so important. The pause is, we could talk about that another time, but um, it's it's often very hard to access, again, because of executive functioning, what we know about the brain and our um, fight, freeze, just the ways in which our brain engage when we perceive threat often is what's happening in the moment where our kids are triggering us. It's very hard to access the rational tools and strategies. And so for me, I really want to explore where clinical hypnosis can help parents at the unconscious level, where a lot of the roots of triggering actually lay, and to see if there's promise there to support parents, and that place, so that some of our conscious tools and strategies could be a little bit more effective in the moment where it really matters the most. So that's something, but again, that takes time and energy, and I don't have a lot of it right now, but that's kind of where I see myself heading, is learning more, related to that particular clinical tool.
Maybe even a parenting podcast or something like that, eh?
I've thought about it. I have absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely have. And just even from the perspective of how do people draw on their professional expertise in parenting? Because we lean on different aspects of our lives, right? Strength, strength builds on strength. So I totally have, Greg. It's
Yeah,
so it's
and that whole concept too, because you've got a community development history, the
Mhm.
strength-based approach that people have these tools within. They may not have appreciated or realized it yet, with someone else in a supportive, empathic way to help guide them towards their own sense of self with that strength to be able to then exercise their strength. That's, the power of self-determination too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I just and coming back to that sense of, um, it can be so heartful and also heartbreaking to be a parent. And so how do we navigate the long haul and still enjoy life when stuff gets really complex? Um,
Mhm.
and just creating space for conversation around that is super hopeful to me. Um, when and how, not 100% sure, not 100% sure, but here's what I've learned. Everything comes when it's supposed to. So if it hasn't happened yet, it's just not the right time. And I've just totally come to a place where I just so honestly trust in timing. I absolutely do. So everything just had it's riding the wave is what I always say. I'm
Yeah.
riding the wave.
Or I might
Yeah.
say going with the flow, and
Yeah.
where that flow leads us or guides us. Actually, I'm hoping that we can create the flow too, that we have
Yeah, sure.
investment in that to create that fluidity and moment of connection with, okay, this is the moment that's supposed to
Hmm.
happen for us
Hmm.
with this idea that we've long held deep within us. So I want to unfortunately say, see you soon.
Well, thank you, Greg. It's awesome that you have this podcast. What a commitment to have these kind of
Did
really
I
kind of open, fruitful conversations. It's amazing.
did I hear you say I should be committed? Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
said, I said, I said, oh my goodness, you're always the jokester. No, thank you for having this space weekly. It's really
Yeah.
great.
Well, it's a passion of mine. Another form
Hmm.
of trying to connect with the world I live within and trying to create a purpose for other people to find their purpose and their connection within. So, someone from the crowd, fantastic discussion tonight. Thank you kindly, Shelley.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone,
Greg,
for
and thank you
coming.
always to the wonderful people who join us on Sunday. So, yes, I encourage people to tap in, tune in each week, and go to the past recordings and go from there. It was great to listen to you both. See you all soon. That's
Thank
also
you.
someone like says
Thank
y'all.
you, Becca.
Look, you've been outed now.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can see the little text box.
yeah,
I
I know.
can, yeah, yeah.
All
It's
right,
awesome.
a heart there. Becca's giving you a heart.
Yay.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks very much, Shelley, and everyone else who's sitting in the
Yes.
bleacher seats. Appreciate it,
Yeah.
and I think there's a wealth of stuff for us to have another conversation at some
And you know
point.
what? Thank you just for allowing me to respond to my child. That was, yeah, this is it, right? So that's really nice.
Yeah, I just see that's one of my purposes to help other people connect with their purpose. It's not
Yeah,
about me, it's about you.
that's awesome.
So thanks everyone, and we'll see you soonish. I say, have a good evening, or if you're on the west coast or the left coast, have a nice earlier evening. All right, take care.
Take
Have a
care,
nice evening.
everybody.
Be well.